you are wrong. This is not happening. But always reflect on what you're doing. Ask yourself, are you happy? Is something missing? Have you made improvements? What do you want to accomplish? Like, what are your short-term, mid-term, long-term goals? And every pathway is different. So even though you might be going down a slightly different pathway like I did, you can still end up getting to the same places but have much different background and much different experiences that really shape how you think about the world. I also want to emphasize building a diverse network of contacts. Anyone that you're interacting with, no matter where you are in life, just keep in touch with these people, especially if you connect with them really well, because you never know when you might need help, possibly finding a job, or maybe you need someone that's going to write a good letter of recommendation for you, which is very important if you're going to go down and try to get a PhD, for example. Letters of recommendations are usually required. And also usually it's good to have references for when you're applying for jobs. But really, regardless of what they're studying, you never know when you might have some type of overlap. And if you get along with them well, I mean, every conversation is going to be very nice to have with these people. So it's not necessarily you're going out of your way to do this. And then kind of the last thing I want to emphasize here is that creativity really does matter. And it's very much encouraged, especially in STEM, especially in research. And it's really necessary. And really, creativity will help you differentiate yourself, as well as having a diverse network. I mean, those are really two things that kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, that's really my main takeaways. And that's all I got for you guys. So I'm ready for questions.
Yeah, seriously. I know I just arrived, but I saw the whole thing and I was so inspired on Monday. I was like, oh, wow, I'm waking up on a Monday morning. I want to be a biochemist. Like, I've never wanted that in my life. Let's take questions from anybody. Or I know, would you like to speak? Let's see. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Thank you so much. That was so interesting. I really loved it. I especially love how you're able to balance like the fun parts of your life, such as your friends, your motorcycle, with quite challenging like academic chemistry, biochemistry kind of side of things. It's such an honor to have you as our first guest speaker at Power On, and we do have a few questions that have come in on the chat, so let me just quickly find them. Okay, what is a good way to record data?
Yeah, so for recording data, I generally use a lab notebook, and actually probably more specifically, I actually run the process in one of my labs for online notebooks. And essentially what that is like if I had an actual notebook, but it was just on my computer. And because patent law, at least in the United States, has changed, that allows us you're never gonna go wrong if you have just typical pen and paper. Just to record your results, also quick notes. It also helps to write down what you are going to do in your experiment. So for experimental planning. But really, if you're looking for other programs, sometimes I use a mix, I guess, of Excel, so Microsoft Excel or Origin Lab. There's really a bunch of different types of programs out there that you can use, and there's not really necessarily one that is standard.
Okay, another question that we have is why would going back to like the structure page on your PowerPoint, the question is, why would the root R be attached to the gamma position when it can break the double bond and be attached to either alpha or beta position? Is there any specific reason for that?
Yeah, and so that's a really great question. It touches on what's actually happening in these reactions. And so that placement, so let me pull up actually the presentation one more time and go back to that slide. So essentially with that, you can leverage this different position, but there's actually one key component here. So with the double bind, you can have reactions there. Sorry, it's all the way back. There we go. So with this double bond on the right side, you can have interactions that actually react with just that position at the alpha and beta position. However, there's some interesting chemistry that goes on. Let me see if I can get a pen here. When you have this, actually, we call it a carbonyl, where the carbon is attached to an oxygen. And I'll draw the arrows. It's okay if you don't understand, but you can actually have a reaction happen here where you move the double bond. And these are representative of essentially what the electrons are doing. So, ooh, sorry, actually that's not right. Just ignore that part. So if I take just a hexagon, draw it out, I can move the double bond then from here and here, and then I have an oxygen right here. So I can actually leverage that, and then that's kind of how, that's not exactly how the reaction actually works. There's actually other things going on, but essentially there is this movement of a double bond that makes it more reactive at this gamma position. So that's actually a really important part of that. But there are other reactions that happen that would occur at this kind of alpha and beta position as well. But it's just due to the nature of the reactants that I'm using.
Okay. Next question. What would you recommend girls from ages 12 to 18 who are interested in research to do at like this stage of their life?
Yeah, so between the ages of 12 and 18 is really a very important part to just build your foundation. So what I mean by that is definitely take classes and take advantage of any course offerings that you have, especially if you're related to STEM, if you want to go into STEM. If you have, biology classes, chemistry classes, physics, math classes that you can take that are available to you, definitely take advantage of those. Although also if you are considering, if you're going to be going off to college to a four-year university, I'm going to start looking at those college websites and seeing what are the requirements of their degree programs, especially in areas you might be interested in. Doing a little bit more research on opportunities for high school students or students to get involved in research. Oftentimes, many of these schools will have programs they usually called UROPs. If you're an undergraduate, that's just an undergraduate research opportunity program. Or other types of things that are really honed in for high school students, especially to get involved. And sometimes it could be like a scientist for a day type of activity where you come to campus at a university, you run an experiment or work with people, have mentors from that university that are either graduate students, maybe even undergraduate students that are helping you with these types of transformations or materials or whatever it is that you want to do. But I would definitely, it's never too early to look into colleges and see what programs are offered. It's never too early to think about what are the application components, what should I be thinking about when I'm looking to apply. But really you should be, if you're thinking, if you're 17, 18 years old and you're kind of, now you're kind of thinking, hey, this might be the time when I'm applying, is when I should be filling out those applications. So definitely keep in touch with that university when their application opens and when it closes every year. And definitely make sure that you're starting early on those applications and filling those out.
Okay, next question. How did your family and friends react when they heard you graduated UIC?
So I would say my immediate family was definitely very proud to have me graduate. I was the second child, so I have an older brother who is 5 years older than me. But everyone came out to celebrate. My stepmom was there as well, and then my aunt and uncle too on one side of my family was there too. And so they were very proud, and they were looking forward to seeing what I was going to do with my new job. But they didn't yet know that I got accepted to MIT until a little bit later I had started that job. And when I told them that, they were just ecstatic. They were super excited for me, and they were just looking forward to see what else there is in store for them to watch and happens.
Can being a biochemist lead you to the path of becoming a vaccine maker or virus controller?
It certainly helps. So with the vaccine making, generally there is, I would say, some standard operating procedures. So there are certain materials that are present in nearly all vaccines. But being a biochemist really can help you understand how the materials are going to interact with each other. When you're talking about, viral diseases, viral infections, and so on, there's certainly different modes of action that they have. And one of the things, at least I guess probably most relevant to this, is what's going on with COVID-19. The development of that vaccine has actually been happening with a different strain of it for many years, and in a lot of the same ways that strain interacts with other molecules in your body, with other cells in your body, is very similar to how COVID-19 interacts, but certainly there's research going on with that as well. But I would say, the more you can know about what's happening in the chemicals and the materials that go into anything, the better you're going to be.
So someone's asked in the chat if we can see some of your art.
So I do not have it on my computer. See if I could pull up something though. I can probably find an old email with some art.
In the meantime, there's another question. When is one considered a scientist?
I would say whenever you're asking questions about your environment, about the world around you, how certain things work, that's when you really start to become a scientist. And it's because that questioning, that curiosity is really what differentiates you between a scientist versus something else. But that also means, if you're thinking science in terms of actually doing STEM work, certainly that adds a component to it. But I think many people have many attributes that would make them a scientist very early on. I mean, I was asking questions about I was a very young girl, and it didn't even occur to me that, that's something that scientists do. And I always thought I was just a creative person, which was another thing. I didn't think scientists were creative. And so really kind of breaking down these misconceptions that I had about science is something that really inspired me, I think, throughout my path, is just knowing like, wow, I actually know a lot of things that I didn't think I knew beforehand.
That's so cool. What would you recommend international students to do when they want to get into these kind of competitive schools such as MIT?
So first thing first, I would say definitely make sure making connections with faculty at whatever. So when you attend a university, whatever university you're going to attend, if that is MIT, make connections with faculty. Make connections with faculty, or before that, make connections with your teachers. So if you're in high school and you're taking certain classes, I'll just use biology for example. Say you're really interested in that, just ask your teacher more questions just about the field in general. And when it comes time to filling out those applications, you can definitely ask them for, hey, can I have a letter of recommendation? They'll likely remember you, especially if you're a high school student that recently took their class. And certainly if you did very well in their class, they will remember you. If for undergrad, you go to a different, say you're not, you can still go to a competitive school in undergrad, and I think that's fine and that's great. I certainly have my own personal opinions about how MIT might run certain classes, but I do think that really making sure you have that foundation is important. And to make yourself stand out, look out for just other activities, even like community service things. So if, volunteering at at different places, maybe if you get the chance, volunteering at a hospital could be cool. But just certainly looking out for different opportunities that you can just take up just to learn more about certain things. Even if it turns out that like that exposure, say working in a hospital, you just are not interested in working in a hospital ever again in your life, that's still valuable to you, and you can still use that on a resume, on an application to any of these colleges to make yourself stand out. But really, when you're talking about this highly competitive application cycle, it can be a little bit difficult. And I will say that just having good grades is not enough. So you definitely need to be involved in other things. Make sure that you're taking advantage of any type of service opportunities you have, because that's something that every day is becoming more and more important to these universities, whether you're an undergraduate or a graduate student. If you're talking about grad school, that's where it really matters, making those connections with your faculty members, with the people that teach your classes. As I mentioned, maybe there's undergraduate research opportunity program at the school that you're attending. Take advantage of that. Because those are the advisors that when you're applying to a PhD program such as MIT chemistry, they're going to really care about what those letters of recommendation say, as well as what your ideas are of what the type of work you want to do, what kind of impact you want to have to whatever field you're considering. If that's going into biochemistry, if that's going into polymer chemistry, which is what I decided to do. They want to understand what's the background that you have. Do you feel prepared? Are you confident enough to do this? And then also, what are the other things that you plan to do that's going to advance science for everybody? Often we think of science in their own world, kind of just out there, and they may be really smart, but they're just doing something that you can't understand. But being able to talk about your science in a way that everybody understands, regardless of their age, is actually an important skill. And so being able to practice that is also something that's very good to have.
The next question is, that was a really good one. Let me just find it. What was something that kept you motivated and productive when times got harder? How do you personally control burnout and prevent it?
Yeah, so my motivation, certainly it's not always at 100%. So like certainly I have days that are better, days that are worse, but really keeping me motivated is making sure that I'm still interacting with whatever it is that I'm working on. So in the case of my work, I'm working on these polymers. Sometimes I'll come across just a synthetic chemistry paper of just some new molecule that was made. And that's something that certainly is expected for me as a graduate student, something that is expected of the program, that you're just paying attention to the research related to what you're doing, as well as just in general. But sometimes I'll just see a very interesting paper of some really small type of small molecule chemistry of something that somebody made, and I'll think, how can that could be applied to the polymers that I'm making? Or I'll think, that's extremely interesting. I love how they really leverage this type of interaction that occurs between these molecules. How can I use that same interaction, maybe a different type of molecule, but it's that same type of interaction in the polymers that I make? Would that affect the performance that I'm getting for the separations that I'm trying to do? And so that's generally one way that keeps me motivated and productive. However, on the days that maybe it's particularly difficult, maybe I need to take, mental health day or something like that to keep myself in the right state of mind. I'll do other things, certainly, read a book for leisure, but also maybe I'm doing some type of drawing on my computer, or I'm sometimes sewing if I have my sewing machine around me. And then also exercise too can help really elevate your mood a little bit. But as far as burnout, it can be very difficult. I've certainly early on in the pandemic, I was in a ton of meetings, a ton of Zoom meetings, and it just really got tiresome. A nice practice that I have seen people use, and I think I really like it, is actually having a no meeting day. And when in your undergrad, if you're in grad school, but basically, after high school and stuff, it becomes easier for you to take just like that day and not have any meetings. Generally though, like I do work sometimes during the weekend. And so that like usually like I would have a day like that in the weekend as opposed to during the week. But it's good to have that too during the week so that way you don't have that burnout if you can help it, or just have like a very light meeting day and then the rest of it is just a working day. Also, sometimes I can have working meetings with roommates, with friends that really just, everyone's working on something. It might not necessarily be the same thing, but at least I'm working with somebody and that can help motivate me too. And then let's see here, proudest moments and achievements, right? Yeah. I would have to say probably my proudest moment would have been when I graduated from UIC. That was definitely, it took about 4.5 years, I would say. And generally nobody really cares how long it takes. But what I think is really important about it is that I was doing a lot of things at the same time. So I was attending UIC full time. I was going on job use. I was working part-time at PQ. I was also going full time at Joliet Junior College. That was a lot of things. My days were about 16 hours long. I definitely don't recommend doing that. You don't necessarily have to do that. You could have gone a different route instead of instead of majoring in biochemistry, I could have done biochemical engineering, for example. But I think I would have gotten kind of a different perspective if I did that as well. But that was something I chose to do. And so after that, I was like, finally, I am done. I can relax. I got a job, the day after I graduated, graduation, and got my degree. I had a job lined up. It was all great. And the hours that I was spending on work were just 8 hours long. And so like definitely like I cut my hours in half basically for the week and found out like I have all this extra time. What do I do with it? And I kind of got bored a little bit. And so I had to figure out like what are the other things I like besides studying. So that's why I say keep track of your hobbies and keep them up, because you will get busy. They might fall off for a bit, but then you'll go through a season where you just want to do everything to do with that hobby.
What was your favorite subject other than art in school? You want to be when you were younger?
Those are great questions. So interestingly enough, I think my favorite subject was math outside of art. And the reason why is my father and my brother are actually both software engineers. So like there is some engineering in my family, just no biochemistry or necessarily biology or chemist. And so I always remember growing up, my dad and my brother would be practicing these math problems. And I was always like, how do I do that? Because I didn't understand math very well when I was younger. And then I just ended up really liking math and just being able to go through the process of doing these multiplication tables. It seems really, really weird and probably not the most exciting, but really it was my sophomore year of high school, I was taking this trigonometry course, and it was an honors class. It was my first honors math class, and I remember thinking to myself, I do not know what's going on in this class. And I was so concerned about my grade, and I was going in early before school to get help with the problem sets. I was staying later after school to them, working with friends in the class, certainly doing a bunch of different things. And I had some people that really helped me explaining certain things that maybe I missed. And then I realized, like, I think one day, it was the first semester, I took this final exam, and I just remember everything fitting together. I just remember everything made sense after that. And then when I started taking the higher level math classes, such as calculus, calc 1, calc 2, and calc 3, I was like, this is insane. I understand this, and I no longer have these issues with these understanding these. And certainly, like, those are also difficult classes. It's just I changed the perspective of how I was approaching it. Because of that art background, I think it really helped me understand math a lot more, even though, like, it might, like, think you're only writing numbers down on a piece of paper. But when you get into those higher math classes, now you're talking about making 3D shapes, for example. And so that really helped out then too.
Another question has just come in through the chat. Do you think high school kids should take up hefty research so early in life?
Let's see here. Hefty research, I guess I wouldn't be too concerned with understanding everything about the research that you're doing, because it's going to take a long time for someone to understand everything about their field. I mean, I'm learning stuff every day about my field, and I've read over 100 papers in this field already, so 100 academic research papers. And so I wouldn't pressure yourself necessarily to, definitely don't beat yourself up over if you don't know something. Don't be afraid to ask questions. So if you end up going down the route, as a high school student, you say, you go to a college that offers some type of program, maybe it's a week-long program or something over the summer for high school students to interact with some research projects. That's still something that's worth doing, and something that's worth, just experiencing it, to make sure you like it, for one, but also you get the exposure, and you get to ask people that are working on this stuff every day and know a lot about these things. And so even, when I started at MIT and I was working in the lab, I didn't do a lot of chemical synthesis about a year before, when I was working in industry. So when I came back to lab, I was like, I forgot every undergraduate research experience doing organic synthesis. I have no idea how to operate this basic piece of equipment. Someone please help me. And I remember just the part of the reason the people that I chose the lab now actually is because I saw how they interact with each other and just how helpful they are and how receptive they are to asking these, to answering my questions, even if I thought that they were a stupid question. And something that I've learned is that there's no such thing as a stupid question. Everybody starts somewhere, and you just build these things as you go. You build information, you understand these things much more as you go forward in life. And so that's, I wouldn't necessarily put yourself to be super exceptional at research. It's a learning experience for you. So, and even then, when you're in high school, college, if you go to grad school, doing a PhD, whatever the case is, if you're asking questions, that shows a lot more to people than you might realize. And it'll look bad if I'm asking these questions, but it actually makes you seem more interested. So even if it's a really basic question and you're just like, I generally do what the answer is, just because you're asking the question to maybe somebody that's what they specialize in, that's still helpful for them. They have to be able to answer a question like that still. And so I would say, whatever you do, ask as many questions as you can to learn as much as you can. And this also goes for if you do work with chemicals. There are safety precautions you need to keep in place. Make sure you're following. You do not want to hurt yourself. The chemicals that I work with can be very dangerous. Even if I prick myself on the finger with a needle, I could lose my finger. So definitely you want to make sure you're asking questions when it comes to safety as well.
Just for time, so that we don't keep going to ask if everyone refrains from asking questions, and we'll just answer the last few. What were some of your role models?
So my role models in science, I didn't have that many. And unfortunately, like that was the case for myself when I was starting, because there really aren't that many half Black women that are scientists. And certainly there are more now, significantly more that I'm seeing, but they weren't the ones that I was being taught about in science class. So I really didn't have a lot of role models that were women in science, or that were, just African American or anything else like that. And I will say, however, really what probably my biggest role model is my brother. He was my older brother, so he certainly protected me from certain things that whether it was family stuff or anything else going on. He definitely was there to make sure that I was in a good state of mind, made sure that I was learning what I needed to learn. He kind of became my own, like a secondary parent, I guess. But he was a really great role model for me, because I thought he was really smart. I looked up to him a lot, and well, now I'm surpassing him because I'm getting a PhD, but he's also in a master's program for his software engineering and doing really cool stuff with that. And I talked to him really just often about just anything in life. And oftentimes when I was younger, I would go to him with questions about, hey, why did dad do this? Why did mom do this? Or what's going on? I don't understand. And he was always there to help, and certainly helped me with tutoring and other stuff like that if I needed help with math classes. So he was probably my most influential role model. And then the second one would be my mom. I choose her because while she actually doesn't have any formal college background. She doesn't have a college degree. She's still a very hard worker. Has worked this specific job, and really has been there for both me and my brother, and made sure that we had got the time to experience whatever we wanted, and is always just very supportive of everything that we do. And I just think, she's a remarkable woman. And so I definitely look up to her and want to make sure I make her proud in some way. And I know she's very proud of me and very proud of my brother.
Final question of the day. Have you ever thought or considered continuing art? Have you ever wondered what could have been if you didn't stop doing art?
Sometimes I do. I believe art has definitely a lot of very important things in society, and can be used in that way. I think if I did continue with art, I think I still would have been fulfilled in some way. So, but I don't think I would have necessarily been a digital artist. I think I actually would have probably gone more the route of being some type of seamstress or fashion designer. And I say that because I picked up sewing, and I learned how to do make patterns out of certain materials and dresses and other clothes. And Project Runway was also kind of a big part of my childhood. I'd always watch that show with my mom. So I think I definitely would have had a very different life. I think I would have still been fulfilled with it, but I think I would have had so many more questions about society in general that maybe I didn't build up the skills to be able to answer those questions. And certainly I think probably, with at least the high school education I had, I probably would have gotten at least somewhat close to it. But I don't know that I would have satisfied my curiosity. I think I would have been fulfilled though in whatever I was doing at the time for art. And I generally do still enjoy it. So I do still do some paintings. I will admit it has been a couple of months. That French horn painting was probably the last painting I made so far. But it's always, whenever I get the chance to, that's what I focus on.
Once again, thank you so much, Kate. We all really enjoyed you being here. It was so lovely that you packed so much useful information within just an hour. And once again, just thank you so much. If anyone would like to learn more about Power On, or connect with other girls in STEM and learn a lot more from each other, you can join us on our forum, or go and check out our Instagram page, where you'll find a lot of challenges to interact with and learn from many posts. Find some role models for you, as we all know that there's not that many girls in STEM role models. Once again, thank you everyone for being here. We hope you enjoyed it, and that's the end of the seminar, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it was really nice, answering these questions and getting to talk with you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Kayla, for being here. This was amazing. I'm going to close the meeting
Yeah, of course.
already.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.